Hi everyone, Tom Wolf here. In this video I'm going to be showing you how I created this sort of modernised string machine type patch in Omnisphere. Mod wheel. So as you can hear, we've got this really kind of vintage sounding string machine, but it has this sort of modern twist to it. It's been run through Omnisphere's granular engine quite a lot, and it's got that kind of grainy feel to it, but it's also got a very kind of ambient and, you know, really quite kind of high fidelity audio sound to it. This is a patch called Dystopian Pasts. It's from my soundbank Dystopia for Omnisphere. So let's have a quick look at how I created it. So over here on Multi 1, I've already deconstructed the patch. So on layer A, we're using this sample called the VP330 strings, which is, you know, a recording of a string machine from Roland, as it says here. It's a string machine that was produced by Roland in 1979. So that's kind of, you know, the foundation of this string machine. So it is using string machine samples, and then we're kind of building on that. So let's hear the raw sound. Okay, so that's our basic kind of string machine sound. It's got that kind of really, you know, crap but quite awesome sound to it, and that kind of quite coveted sound now. So it's a great sample. So the next thing I did is run that through the granular engine. So let's open that up. And you can see we've got the grain depth set to about 1/3, the intensity only up just slightly, smoothing to the max so we get a nice kind of smooth sound to it, spread all the way up, a little bit of detuning on it, and you can also see that we have got quite a bit of sort of pitching on it. The direction is up, so that's going to be pitching up rather than below the original note, and we've got the interval set to 12 semitones as well, so that's going to be pitching up an octave. So let's hear that with that on. So without. So we get this kind of granular octave overtone there. We've also got it set to position, so it's kind of sounding round the front here, although, you know, if we could have it in any position here really, because it's quite a consistent sample there. So then we've got the filter on it, so let's just switch that on. And you can see that's a modified filter. So if we go in here, we've got filter 1 set to a low pass UVI 2, and then we've got filter 2 set to state variable 12 dB. We've got it set to parallel, so that they are running one next to each other. We've got the mix set mostly to UVI 2, but, you know, we are getting a little bit of the state variable in there as well. And we've got the state variable offset, you know, up quite a bit, so it's going to be kind of sounding higher than where our cutoff is, but we've got the resonance down a lot. We've also got our overall cutoff quite low with a little bit of resonance, and we've got quite a lot of envelope controlling it there. So if we have a little look at our envelopes, so on our amp envelope we've got a 2.5 second attack, sustain is all the way up, and we've got a really long release, so 4 seconds release, and then our filter is an identical copy of that, so it's exactly the same. So as the amp opens up, the filter's going to be opening up at the exact same rate. We've got the velocity set all the way on the filter as well, so we're going to have quite a dynamic sound. So this is how it sounds with the filter. So we're getting rid of a lot of that kind of top buzziness from the string machine, getting a little bit of kind of sweeping resonance as well. Okay, so let's mute that layer and we'll go over to layer B. So as you can see on layer B, we're using the same sample, the VP330 strings. We've actually got this one transposed up an octave. So we're getting that kind of, you know, dual octave sound to the patch, which is also kind of doubling up with the granular engine on layer 1, which was also pitching the grains up an octave. Also had the granular engine on this, so we can switch that on. And this is an exact copy of the first layer. So we've got the same settings, including the pitched grain. So we've actually got this sound kind of sounding across 3 octaves, which gives it that really big kind of warm sound to it. So that's going to sound exactly the same as layer A, but an octave up. Let's put our filter on. So again, this is an exact clone of layer A. So we've got UVI2 and state variable 12 dB, exact same settings. So it's kind of, it's, you know, an exact copy of layer A, just an octave up to give us that kind of big warm sound. Where this does differ though, we've got the panning. So we've got it set slightly to the left, just fractionally, but we've also got this being controlled by our LFO1. So LFO1 is set to 3, it's set to sine wave. It's in bipolar, so it's going to be going both sides of the center point. It is synced, and as you can see, we've got it set to 32 notes, so it's really quickly panning. Let's unmute that. So if you're wearing headphones, you'll probably be able to hear that. It's just adding a tiny little bit of stereo image to it, just a little bit, not too much, but just kind of adds to the overall sound. So let's have a look at layer C. So this patch actually uses all 4 layers, which is quite good. So on layer C, we've got the DSP engine, which is running a Mini Moog Sawtooth, Mini Moog. I'm British, so, you know, we pronounce things weird. So we've got the envelope set to roughly the same, slightly longer attack on that one, same release, sustain is all the way up. So this particular layer, we're actually using the unison to get it kind of fatter. So let's just listen to our original sawtooth wave. Basic sawtooth wave. We'll switch the unison on. We've got the detune set to fairly low. We don't want too much detune on it, and the depth is set to all the way to the bottom with the spread all the way up. So that gives us quite a warm, got that kind of warm stereo sawtooth sound to it. So then we're going to use our filter. So again, so this is different from the first 2 filters. So we're only using 1 layer. So we're using the UVI2. You can see it was kind of copied from the first 2, and then we switched off the state variable here. So all we're getting is the UVI2 filter. Cutoff is set to, I think, roughly the same, with a little bit of resonance as well. And again, quite a lot of envelope control there. So get rid of that buzzy top, get a much warmer, fatter kind of classic sawtooth string sound. We've then also got a pan mod on this. You can see again that's just slightly to the left, and it's being controlled by LFO1 again. So we'll unmute that, and that's again just kind of adding to the stereo image slightly. And then we'll move on to layer 4. So on layer 4, we've actually got one of the DSP wavetables. It's from the thin category, one called Stretch. Switch it on first. Let's have a listen to that. So we've got this really thin kind of buzzy wavetable there. So this was run through the unison engine, so we switched that on. Detune set quite low again, and the depth all the way to off with the spread all the way up. Much kind of wider and thicker sound there. And you can see we've also got the shape modulated as well. So this is being controlled by a mod envelope. We'll have a look at the mod envelope. So this is a copy of the amp envelope over here. So it's exactly the same, set to just over 3 seconds on the attack, full sustain, and then 4-second release. So it's not changing the shape too much. You can see, you know, we've got it set to control it just a little bit, but as we play the sound, that shape of that waveform is going to change and the sound's going to morph slightly until we release again. So you can just hear that changing slightly as the sound kind of builds in. Cool. So we've then got the filter, so we'll switch that on and we can see that this is a copy of our layer C filter. So we're just using the UVI2, not the state variable. We've got the cutoff set to low again and a little bit of resonance there, which is just going to take the edge off of that. So yeah, we've not got quite such a buzz on it. And then last but not least, we've got our pan again. So that's also being controlled by LFO1. So let's unmute that. So let's start switching on all of our sounds then. So we'll come over here to our string machine. The result of that is that we've got this really kind of fat, warm string style patch. You know, it does kind of hark back to that kind of era of the kind of NAF string machine back in the 70s. But it does have this kind of more kind of like modern synth wavy kind of vibe to it, where it's kind of emulating these sounds from the past, but actually doing it in a way that's a bit more clean and modern and kind of pristine, and brings that extra kind of sound quality to it. So it's this really kind of warm, fat patch that is a blend of the string samples and the DSP that really gives this, you know, its kind of vintage character with a bit more kind of warmth and depth to it. So let's have a look at our effects, okay? So we've not got anything on any of our individual layers here, but what we have got is we've got some common effects. So the first thing is the precision comp. If you've watched any of these videos before, I love putting the precision comp on stuff because it just kind of glues the sounds together, and this is a preset that I made, basic comp, which just, yeah, it kind of just glues the sounds together a little bit and makes it sit together a little bit better. Let's turn that down a little bit. So it adds quite a bit of volume to the patch. Okay, so ratio set to 4.2, sustain set to 8 dB. We've got quite a long release there. Okay, then we've got Studio EQ2. So you can see we've got the first band set to peaking. We've got the frequency set to 805, and it's just removing just under a couple of dB there, with the Q set to 0.3. So it's just kind of nipping out a little bit there. And then we've got a high shelf as well, which is set up to just over 3K. The gain's turned down just over 2 dB, 2.5 dB there. And we've got a 0.2 Q. So this is just going to kind of remove a little bit of the brightness. So it's not doing a lot, but it's kind of making it, you know, sound a little bit darker and just taking out some of that kind of bright toppy edge. Because the thing about string machines is that they, you know, have very, very kind of buzzy toppy edges to them. So, you know, this was just something to take out some of that kind of, you know, distracting top end so that it could blend just a little bit better with other stuff. And then we've got the Proverb as well. So the mix is set to 17, so it's quite low. Size is quite low. Room size is 34. Time's sort of high-ish, so 4,336 milliseconds. You know, pre-delay around 36 milliseconds. We've then got CPU set to 23%, density is all the way up, that bit's quite important, and diffusion is all the way up as well. So let's hear it with the reverb. So that's just giving us that kind of ambient tail to the sound. Cool. So the next thing we've got is what was on our mod wheel. So on our mod wheel, we've actually got this kind of long, ambient, really kind of thin, filtered out sound, which is over on our aux channel there. So what we need to do first is just unmute this modulation. So we've got the aux send being controlled by the mod wheel. So let's unmute that. You can see that is going to open the aux send up completely, and we'll come over to the aux, and we've also got the aux return being controlled as well. So that's, yeah, half volume there. So let's unmute that. So unless we've got the mod wheel up, this isn't going to sound. But let's open the mod wheel for that. So first we've got Retroplex, which is this awesome vintage delay. Adds lots of kind of ambient character to sounds. This auxiliary is kind of about the kind of cumulative effect. So each particular part isn't going to make a huge difference. Kind of adds on this kind of bright washy tail, and it's great because you know, it's modeled on tape delays, so it's got this kind of flutter to it. It's got this warping that gives it quite a kind of vintage sound to it, which, you know, was perfect for this patch because we do want to keep a little bit of that vintage string machine type sound to it. Then we've got the radio delay, which is set to just over halfway the mix. The radio delay is this great kind of lo-fi crunchy delay. So we've got the high pass filter set to just over 1K, and we've got the low pass filter set to just over 3K. So it's going to be thinning that sound out quite a lot, but it is letting some of the dry signal through. We've got relatively short feedback there, but that is going to be adding just a little bit of kind of lo-fi delay to it, we can hear on the tail there. We've then got the valve radio as well, so we're kind of doubling up on this kind of vintage lo-fi filtering. This is the mix set to 100% on this one, and we've got the low pass set to 3K again, and the high pass set to just below 1K. Q up quite a long way, so that's now going to completely filter that sound. So our tail's just getting a little bit more kind of lo-fi there. And then we're going to add in the proverb. So the proverb, we've got the mix set to just under halfway. We've got a really, really, really long full time, in fact, for the reverb. Size just under halfway. Density's up to about 2/3. And then we've got the diffusion up quite high as well. So that's going to give us a really long, washy reverb tail, which obviously it's going to be coming through the Retroplex, which is giving us this kind of warped delay kind of sound. We've got this filtered out vintage delay here, and then the entire sound is being filtered again. So it's going to be this really thin kind of reverb tail. There we go. We get that long lo-fi reverb tail to it, which is really nice. But of course I put that on the mod wheel, so if we don't want that in our sound, we can just remove it by turning the mod wheel off. The last thing to look at, that's pretty much our patch, but the last thing is we've also got a bit of vibrato on the aftertouch as well. So we'll come into our modulation here. We've still got these muted. So the amplitude of each of the 4 layers is being controlled by LFO2. So let's unmute that. We can come back out of here and have a look at our LFO2. So LFO2 is set to sine, it's legato, and we've got the position set to the center point so that it syncs up nicely with our tempo when we play. We've got it tempo synced, and we've got that set to 1/8 notes. You can see here that the depth for the LFO is currently set to 0, so that's where our aftertouch comes in. So show mod, aftertouch, and it's going to be controlling it, so it's going to be opening it just over halfway to get that little bit of vibrato. So if I now hold down the aftertouch, we get that vibrato sound to it, which just adds a little extra something. Okay, so that's how I created the patch Dystopian Pasts from Dystopia. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that useful, and I hope you like the patch at the end of it. And, you know, you can create your own, and you can play about with certain things and sort of modify the patch to your own taste if you like. If you did like the video, please do subscribe, because I have been making a lot of these videos. I'm going to carry on doing so, but, you know, it's only worth doing if people are actually watching it. So yeah, please do subscribe, and please do check out the videos each week as I release them. If you did like the sound as well, and you would like to check it out on your own, or you'd like to check out some more sounds like this, it's from my soundbank Dystopia, which is a collection of these kind of vintage cinematic style sounds, which are sort of inspired by stuff like Vangelis, and also, you know, like Tron Legacy soundtrack and Blade Runner and that kind of thing. So it's cinematic synthesis, but it's got a kind of modern twist to it. And, you know, I tried to kind of make it my own. I didn't want to just create yet another kind of synth wave type sound that kind of is inspired by these kind of classic synth scores. I wanted to do something that's a little bit more me, so that's why it's got a lot of kind of granular engine and a lot of that kind of ambient sound to it. So yeah, if you want to check that out, there's a link to it in the description below. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.